This is Texans TV. Texans Extra Points is sponsored by BHP and by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by your local Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
We are ready to rock at NRG Stadium. Whitney Merciless with the sack. Throws left side of the end zone. Caught. Hopkins. Touchdown, Houston.
It's fantastic that you're with us here on Texans Extra Points. Drew Doherty, your host, with two of my good friends, DP Sidhu of the Houston Texans and John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, and you hear him on Sports Radio 610. We have so much to get into, but first we got to get some news of the week out of the way, and for that we turn to quick hits, and we start with December football. We're in the thick of it. The Texans have just 3 more games to go, and so much is possibly in front of them, as Bill O'Brien discusses.
Talked about it this morning, lifting weights, running, practicing in 100-degree heat and training camps for games like this. You got a chance to, participate in a big game, and I think our players understand that, and I think that's what the game's all about.
Whether he plays on Sunday or not, the importance of receiver Will Fuller V is drastic. He makes a difference on defenses. He makes the offense so much better and loosens things up for everyone around him.
I mean, very big. It's another weapon that makes a lot of big-time plays and that can, take the top off and do some great things for us. So definitely, seeing how the week goes and we can definitely use them.
It's a white-hot Tennessee Titans team that the Texans take on Sunday in Nashville. 6 of the last 7 they've been victorious, and that's all happened with Ryan Tannehill under center.
Yeah, they just stop the run. That's the easiest way. It sounds easy, but at the end of the day, you stop the run. It don't make them one-dimensional, but at least they don't have the backers, the safeties, and everybody sucking up when they see their run fake. I think playing good first down defense to where, obviously it's not 2nd and 3, 2nd and 2 to where you're thinking it's running, they play action. So putting them in 2nd and long situations kind of can take that away also.
Okay, we'll get into the matchup with the Titans in just a bit, but we start with basically a quick look back, and why should the Texans forget what happened last Sunday? John, we begin with you.
They better forget about it. They have to forget about it, and it's good that they're playing a division game and a game that means everything. If they win the last 3, they finish 11-5. They win the division for the 4th time under Bill O'Brien. I think they will be focused because they've bounced back after every loss.
Yeah, you hate to see the loss, but historically this season, Texans have done well after losses. They've won.
The last time they played a division rival in the Indianapolis Colts, the Texans were coming off their loss against the Ravens. They did exactly what John said. They put it in the rearview mirror. In fact, we didn't even really talk about it. It was such a short week that I had to go back and look at the final score of that game because it seemed like as soon as that game was over, they were on Indianapolis, and the good thing was they won that Thursday, so they at least had that to sort of bounce themselves back. But John's right. I mean, there's so much ahead of them. It's another divisional game, and they've got to just look at the Broncos game as just an aberration.
My 6-year-olds are learning about patterns in school, and like the rest of the city, they've reminded me, well, hey, the Texans have lost 1 game and won the next 2 throughout this year. So how important is what Deshaun Watson does? Because he's kind of like that pattern. When he's had a bad game, he's bounced back, and he's bounced back in a pretty big way.
He's been great against the Titans, and he's been great rebounding from losses, and he is the most important person on the team. Defense not very good, so they're going to have to score a lot of points, and I think with Watson's history against the Titans, including that loss up there last year, he's the best chance to win.
Yeah, he brings up what Watson's done against the Titans. He's been magnificent here in NRG Stadium the last few times. Been a little bit different on the road, but like John said, last year was much better than what he'd seen. So what does Watson have to do?
I mean, I think he had a good game against the Broncos. The problem was it started just a little too late. If they can get off to the fast start, I know it's something that we harp on and talk about every single week, but the Texans have talked about it every single week, about how coming out, they got to start fast, they got to score early, because, when you get yourself into a 5-touchdown hole, you can come back, but it's almost insurmountable at that point. Yeah. So if they can sort of get into the game early, get the rhythm going earlier, they won't have to find themselves in a situation like they did against Denver.
It's interesting. We talk all the time and focus on the stats that T.Y. Hilton of the Colts has had against the Texans. He's been magnificent against Houston. I'll say that, I promise. Deandre Hopkins, in a similar way, if you space it out over 16 games based on his averages, he'd have close to 1,600 yards receiving. He'd have about about 10 touchdowns. His teams have gone 8-4 in the 12 games that they've played. He's roasted the Titans. Did they have that sense up there in Nashville about how good he's been against the Titans, John?
No, they know he is, but they also think the strength of their defense is in their secondary. They've got good corners, good safeties. This year with Errol Landry in his second season having 9 sacks, they're getting more pressure on the quarterback. They will double Hopkins, and as you mentioned at the top of the show, if Fuller's there, that makes such a difference for their coverage. Mike Vrabel's approaching this game like Will Fuller will be there, but what a break for them if he's not, and what a break for Hopkins, because he is better with Fuller in the lineup.
He sure is, and he's better. Watson's better. The whole offense is better with Will Fuller in this lineup. He loosens things up, like I've said so many times, in so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret that they're able to stretch the field with Fuller in the game. They can run the ball better. There's so many different things that they can do because it really spreads out the defense. Someone has to stay on Will Fuller. I think whatever it is, you just have to plan for both scenarios with Will.
Well, it can't be worse than what we saw, I think, 2 or 3 years ago when it was DeAndre Hopkins and then just basically a mash unit of guys that were plucking from different. I mean, for goodness sakes, Andre Ellington, a running back, was having a lineup at wide receiver. It was an ugly day in Nashville that afternoon, but you didn't have Watson there, so that was kind of a different deal. We're going to get into the defense and what they got to do in just a bit, but we turn now to the telestrator, and our good pal John Harris breaks it all down X's and O's wise.
Welcome to the Texans Telestrator presented by BMW. I'm your host, John Harris, and we're going to take a look at the Texans' first touchdown against the Denver Broncos and see how it happened. Well-designed play. It's one the Texans have run, and we've probably telestrated a few times, but there's an added wrinkle in here what makes it tough for the Broncos to cover. You're going to see DeAndre Hopkins here run all the way, and he's going to be wide open over this side of the field. Deshaun's going to step back, step into the pocket, fire here. It's going to be wide open, 43-yard touchdown. Wish things were that simple all the time. Now, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to do it what looks like quarter, half. So you're playing a quarter of the field, and they're playing half over here. So there are various rules for these two guys in particular, and their eyes are going to get stuck on these two wide receivers, and they never see Hop come over to this side of the field. So you're going to have Kiki right here in the middle. He's going to run this deep over. Hop's going to run this deep over, and then Kenny is going to run this post down the middle of the field. So the post is hopefully going to take this guy or this guy, and that's what your hope is. Now, maybe you get Kiki to draw that guy, or maybe Kiki's drawn to that guy, and then you'll have Hop over here wide open. And that's essentially what happens. When Kiki runs his route here, he's going to draw the safety. See that right there? He's going to draw the safety. This half-field safety is like, look, I'm hanging out over here, and I think when he did this, that was a signal, hey, bro, you should stay back over here. But he kept coming, and now he's got to stay on top of the post, and there's Hop wide open. So if we run this back, if you're wondering, wait, what should they have done? If they're playing this coverage, when he signals, he should tell him, hey, look, I got this. Stay here so he takes the post, so then he can fall off on Hop, and they'd have all three covered. But because they jump on this route, and now he's got to stay on the post, and he's staying over here in his half field, now you got nobody over here for Hop. Throw it out there, and Hop's walking the end zone with the easiest touchdowns he's ever had. Now, offensive line protection. You get a four-man look. They're going to drop those three. So look at Laramie. Just get those hands immediately on Vaughn. Look at how low Vaughn is. Look at that. Laramie's getting down to him and really gets him off path. Getting him all the way upfield, and Max taking Shelby Harrison here, that gives Deshaun an escape route right here. And it isn't to run, but it's to set himself because he knows what the coverage is. He sees this right here. 22, Kareem, when he goes with Kiki, he knows, wait a second, there's not going to be anybody on this side of the field over here. So when Deshaun gets out, he knows he's not running. He just has to get to a clean pocket. That buys Hop a couple more seconds to get out there, and that's a touchdown. Well conceived. Well done against zone coverage. Well done by Deshaun, offensive line doing a good job protection. We need more of that over these last 3 games of the year.
Glad you're back with us on Texans Extra Points. Got Drew, DP, and John, and we've got a next-gen stat powered by AWS. And, man, we've talked all season long about how fantastic Zach Cunningham has played, and he leads the NFL in stops. That's a different category than tackles, and it's really a more important category than tackles because this is basically tackles where you're not letting the offense do too much and you're kind of keeping them at bay. All right, so we'll get into Cunningham a little bit later, but let's talk about the pass rush or lack thereof. They are desperate to get after the quarterback, and they just haven't done it since J.J. Watt's been gone. And even then, they were still kind of lacking in things. How do you get the pass rush going, John?
When Watt went out, Merciless had the hot start. Now the offenses can focus on Whitney, so he's been a long time since he's had a sack. Had one nullified against the Broncos, and Jacob Martin's the only consistent pass rusher with 3.5 in the last 3 games, which is one half more than Jadeveon Clowney has with Seattle. And I look for him to play more, but it's hard when you don't have a lot of pass rushers. It's tough on a secondary that needs as much help as it can get.
Yeah, he brings up Martin, and Martin is a glimmer of hope right now coming down the stretch. He is kind of heating up, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very pleased with what he's able to do, but of course, no one can replace J.J. Watt and what he's able to do.
Yeah.
And you hope that Whitney Merciless can get it going. He's typically had some very good games against the Titans, but it's different without Jadeveon Clowney, without J.J. Watt. And he's right, offenses can focus on Whitney Merciless. But I think also when you're down in a game and opposing teams start running the ball more, there are less opportunities for the pass rush to really get going.
Yeah, I just said glimmer of hope a moment ago, and I guess there might be another one in Watt. There's a possibility he comes back. I think it's a long shot, but then everything else tells me, hey, don't bet against this guy, J.J. Watt. What would that mean, and how much of a possibility is it, actually, do you think, John?
Well, I mean, nobody knows right now.
Yeah.
They're hoping, but they don't know. We've learned not to count out Watt. It's not going to be in regular season. I'd be surprised if it was in the first round, maybe if they got farther, but it's not something you can count on.
No, it's not something you can count on, but sure would be nice, huh?
I am always the optimist. So until they bring back that second player off IR, I know that spot is wide open for J.J. Watt. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, which is usually what someone says when they get ahead of themselves.
You like doing that on the radio.
I love doing that. But let's say it's Pittsburgh and the Texans in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's
You're wanting a Watt brothers thing.
J.J. Watt, of course. I mean, the world needs to see that.
Whether he's ready or not, bring him back.
Yeah, okay.
Why not?
Well, let's not get too far. I mean, I don't want to hurt anybody here. So if you're watching JJ, it's just cool. Just keep rehabbing. Hey, the cornerback rotation, you've upgraded the talent there. It's all first rounders, but it's kind of been weird in the mixing and matching. How does that shake out, you think, John?
They call it a rotation. I call it a benching. Bradley Roby was supposed to have the kind of game Kareem Jackson had, his revenge game. Not quite.
Yeah.
He spent too much time on the bench, played about 75% of the snaps, but it's hard for the DBs when you got no pass rush. But in the game against Denver, they were letting guys run wide open. Whatever caused that, they've got to change it or Tannehill will pick them apart. Yeah,
the tackling really was substandard against the Broncos. What do you see there, though? It seems like they're ripe for a bounce back, no?
Yeah, they are. And John's right. It is hard to get into a rhythm when you are rotating cornerbacks. I wouldn't call it a benching so much as maybe you're just protecting guys from further injury because you got Roby back for the first time after a number of games where he was out with a hamstring. And then you got a guy like Jonathan Joseph, a veteran who you really have to monitor his reps as you get further and further into the season. So you want to keep him healthy for this final stretch. You want to keep Roby healthy. You want to keep all your guys because we've seen that secondary really banged up, especially in the middle of the season. So maybe it's to protect themselves from further injury, but I hope as they get healthier, we start to see a little bit more consistency in the backfield.
All right, we're going to get into the matchup after the break, but we leave you with a little bit of Texans trivia, and you guys over there stay quiet. What's the record this decade for the Texans against the Titans? It's pretty good. We'll have the answer a little bit later on here on Texans Extra Points.
First down at the 15-yard line of Tennessee. Watson with the keeper, left side, has the 10, has the 5, going for the corner. He's in! 15-yard touchdown run for Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson can run it, can he? Welcome back to Texans Extra Points. Drew Doherty, DP Sidhu, John McClain. That was last time the Texans played the Titans. And Deshaun, everyone remembers the Lamar Miller 97-yard touchdown run, and understandably so, but Deshaun got in the end zone as well, but we're talking about the quarterback of the Titans. What has gotten into Ryan Tannehill? He's not a tomato can, but this guy had his struggles in Miami, and he is playing out of his mind. He is excellent right now.
You better hope he doesn't hear some Texans guy call him a tomato, not a tomato can.
Not a tomato can.
It's very clear about that.
He's 31 years old. It's his 8th year. He's always been mobile, played receiver at A&M before he was a quarterback. And he's in the right system. He's got his right teammates. He's playing for a new contract. He's going to get the new contract from the Titans. He's just been unbelievable. His highest rating in Miami, 93.6 in 2016. This year he's 118, and he's the second quarterback in history, 4 games in a row, be at least 130. He hasn't been below 131 these last 4 games, and one reason he's been so good, the play action with Derrick Henry, who's been fantastic.
What have you seen from Tannehill? Why is he playing so great lately?
I mean, I just think he's a veteran. He's been in the NFL a number of years. He was able to sit back and watch Mariota those early games, and he just sort of came in. He seems very decisive. John mentioned his quarterback passer rating. That leads the league right now, and he's probably coming off his best game of the season, nearly 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, just 1 pick against Oakland, and they were down in that game, or they were tied, and he came back in the second half. The defense played out of their minds. He played out of his mind. I think he's just decisive. He's got the run game going. He's got some really good young receivers, and he spreads the ball around. It's not just 1 or 2 guys that he goes to. I think he's able to make his reads very quickly, and that just comes from being a veteran in the league.
Hey, the way Derrick Henry's running the ball, John, does that remind you of anybody you've seen over the years?
Sure does. Eddie George. Eddie George was 6'3", 248. I believe Henry's 6'3", 247, but the difference is Henry's got the speed for long runs, which we see a lot on Sports Center and NFL Network.
Yeah, the Texans saw it in 2017 to close the game.
And he can do it whether he's catching or running, and he's in the last year of his contract. He's already has almost 1,300 yards. So they got to worry about him as a runner and a receiver, and those little defensive backs coming up to try to tackle him and hit him, they risk injury.
Yeah, that's not a fun task there. All right, let's stick with you, John. We got to get our Gatorade players to watch going. Who are you checking out on Sunday?
Justin Reid, not just because of the pass with Ryan Tannehill, but he's got to come up and tackle Derrick Henry if he gets onto the second level. And the odds are he's going to be on the second level. And I think Justin's 205 going up against a guy coming full speed. So him as a run defender and playing the pass is essential if the Texans are going to win.
All right, John has Justin Reid. DP, who do you got?
I mean, a guy that I think you watch every single week, Deandre Hopkins. He's played a lot of games against the Titans. The Texans are 8-4 with Hopkins in the lineup. He hasn't missed a game yet. He's caught 7 touchdown passes against them, and he's had some of his best games. You mentioned T.Y. Hilton. He is sort of like T.Y. Hilton to the Titans because he's had 6 games. 6 of his games have been 100-yard performances as well. So with all of the questions at wide receiver, who's in or who's out, it's DeAndre Hopkins that's consistent. He's in there every single week, and I think Deshaun's going to go to him quite a bit.
He's tougher than stale beef jerky. I mean, you know all the good stuff he can do as far as catching the ball, but that guy is durable upon durable upon. I mean, he is just amazing. He's missed 1 game in his entire career. It's 7 years now that he's going on. All right, you guys have them. I'm going to go with Zach Cunningham. It seems like every week one of you guests, this entire season, has picked Zach Cunningham for good reason. He's got a face, and he's going to be one of the main guys that's bringing down Derrick Henry, you think. DJ Reader as well, Deandre McKinney, but I'm watching Cunningham. That's who I got my eyes on, and we got our eyes on you. So stick with us. More Texans Extra Points when we return.
Texans Extra Points is sponsored by BHP and by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Houston Texans, and by your local Ford dealers. Ford is the best in Texas.
One final segment of Texans Extra Points. Drew Doherty, DP Sidhu, and John McClain. We got to get a Texans trivia answer out of the way. Earlier we asked this decade, so the 2010s and the teens, what's the Texans record against the Titans? It's been pretty good, 12-6. So Texans looking for win number 13, lucky 13, and this is the time of the show where we get into the keys of the game. How do the Texans get that 13th win of this decade, John? 2 keys from you, sir.
Contain Derrick Henry, of course. Don't let them have a lot of long offensive drives to keep Deshaun Watson on the bench. And the other one, the Titans are first in red zone offense. The Texans are fifth. So when the Texans are in the red zone, capitalize and somehow keep the number one red zone offense in the league. Limit them to field goals.
Those are pretty good ones. How about you, DP?
I would say get off to a fast start. I know we talk about it every single week, but the Texans, it hasn't happened, but I know it's going to happen. I know they're due. Right. So they're going to get off to a fast start. Don't get yourself in a hole early. And then defensively, I think he mentioned stop Derrick Henry, but also get some pressure on Wright and Tannehill. Make things uncomfortable for him. Don't let him complete all those passes.
Okay, one thing the Texans have done very well all season long is be consistent on special teams. I mean, they are keeping teams in poor starting field positions, and they're starting the field position pretty well. They've not been very explosive, however, on special teams. I want a punt blocked. I want a field goal blocked. I want a kick or punt return for a touch. Something splashy on special teams. And then on top of that, I want a 100-yard rusher from the Texans. We don't know if Fuller's going to play totally or not, so let's get some ground game going because we haven't seen it in a while. That's what I think happens, or that's what I think could happen. And if it does, Texans walk away with a victory. You got to win the turnover battle too, because they've been underwater in that category very, very lately. All right, John, thank you so much for coming on. DP, good to have you as always, and we appreciate all of you watching us as well. We will be back next week with a special edition of Texans Extra Points, because remember, they're playing on the road against the Bucs, so that night we're going to have a different edition of Texans Extra Points, but it'll be on at the same time, same place, and we appreciate you watching. All right, for the guys that put this together, I'm Drew, and we will see you next time. Take care. Go Texans.
Thanks for watching Texans Extra Points. Now, leave your keys to the game in the comments below.